we had a good visit on Wednesday morning with Dr. Jonathan Tripp when he was in studio with us. And someone, Dr. Tripp or a member of his staff, will be back with us next Wednesday morning right here on News Radio 1310 KLIX at newsradio1310.com. Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine. We had a lengthy conversation this past Wednesday about cancer, about prevention and about treatment and about the survival rates, which are getting better and better. Next week, we'll have obviously another topic, but we do always welcome your telephone calls if you've got a medical question. The medical professionals are here for that very reason, to answer that. And as they like to say at the office, when was the last time you had an opportunity to ask a friend about a health topic and actually get someone to point you in the right direction? We should note Dr. Tripp's office is located on Fillmore Street in Twin Falls, directly across from the main post office. And of course, life's too short not to feel good. Governor Butch Otter is among a group of governors from around the country. There are probably almost evenly split between Democrats and Republicans who are asking the House and Senate in Washington to clear the way for normalization of relations with Cuba. This is a headline from Boise Weekly. Otter, 8 other governors urging Congress to lift Cuba trade embargo. An official release from the governor's office touted deals to sell biotechnology, seed potatoes, and plenty of meat. In fact, Falls brand Independent Meats of Twin Falls announced a plan to ship more than 50 tons of boneless pork, valued at more than $100,000 in a matter of months, but none of that happened. By the way, could we point out that probably Falls brand, because they work so much with pork, they will not be employing many of these newcomers to our community. But that's just a thought on another topic we were talking about a few minutes ago. Now it says Otter has joined the governors of Alabama. Governor Bentley there is a staunch conservative Republican. California, where they have Governor Moonbeam, Minnesota, Montana, Pennsylvania, Vermont, Virginia, and Washington, in writing a joint letter to U.S. House Speaker John Boehner, U.S. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, U.S. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, and, of course, Minority Leader Harry Reid, saying, quote, ending the embargo will create jobs here at home, especially in rural America, and will create new opportunities for U.S. agriculture, unquote. I got a couple of mixed feelings about that. I lived for many, many years next door to a fellow whose family had escaped the Castro regime. And my friend Jose ended up joining the U.S. Army because he wanted to fight communists in Southeast Asia. And, of course, the Army sent him to Germany and made him a typist. And then later he became a school teacher, then a school principal, and now he's one of the few conservative professors working on a college campus. We should note that he often has to eat alone in the faculty dining room. And he would tell me stories about what it was like there after the Castros took control of the country. And it's hard to believe that here we are, complete lifetimes have passed, and these guys are still in charge. But I also understand there's an argument that perhaps if you open the gates somewhat between the two countries, that eventually the Castros are going to die, and you might end up with something better, and why not have better relationships with those people than, let's say, they might have with the Russians or somebody else around the world who we really don't want on our doorstep. So I'm trying to weigh that one in my mind. 44-837, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And we have a caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Bill. How are you doing today?
It's wonderful. What's up?
Well, I'm just kind of wondering, it doesn't surprise me that Governor Otter is joining this group because he's not a leader at all. He joins all these other groups that people seem to start, but he never starts anything on his own. And he's made a whole bunch of false promises that he never follows through with. And I keep wondering, why are we still reelecting him as governor if he's not going to follow through with what he tells the people? He's a great politician telling us what we want to hear, whether it's from wolf eradication or, I support the cattlemen and the ranchers, but he never comes out and publicly does anything to show that he's actually supporting those industries.
I'll give you one example where he has gone his own way, and that is after this so-called agreement on greater sage-grouse, and all of these other governors went along with the federal government on de facto listing of the sage-grouse as an endangered species, even though it wasn't technically done, and he filed a lawsuit. So in that case, he is actually striking out on his own and doing something.
Okay, one of many. I mean, I was at the steps of the state capitol several years ago when they reintroduced the wolves and they had a big rally up there. And he promised all the hunters and all the wildlife sportsmen and stuff that he was going to eradicate the wolves and take care of the issue. he's in charge of the guy that, he appoints the head of the Fish and Game, and that guy's just as liberal as Otter is.
There are a lot of people in government anymore who make a lot of promises, especially Republicans, to constituents who've been electing them really since the Reagan era.
Why can't we get you off the radio and get up to Boise or something to represent people?
There's a huge difference between doing a talk radio show and actually having to deal with a room full of other people who may not necessarily agree with you.
Well, like I told Brad the other day when I called into his side, I said we just need to quit worrying about offending people anymore. Back in the day, we weren't worried about offending people by telling the truth.
Yeah.
But nowadays, we're so worried about how people feel and hurting their feelings because they don't want to hear the truth. I mean, whatever happened to the saying, the truth hurts.
I haven't heard that since high school. That was back in the 1970s.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thank you much for the telephone call, sir. Ronald Reagan, in fact, was just getting the wheels rolling on his presidential campaign in the late 1970s, and that was really the last time we had people just telling it directly to us. And even then, Reagan couldn't get the job done, I think, to the extent that he wanted. You know why? A couple of years ago, I got invited by my then congressman to participate. He had a group of people. We had about 50 people in a room, and he put us all in smaller groups first, like committees, and we had to debate spending issues and then try to come to an agreement with the entire group. Tell you what, I had people sitting at my table who I had seen at Tea Party meetings who were like, well, yeah, we should still keep giving free college because, well, we got it, and so therefore we should give it to our kids. And I'd say, but we can't afford it any longer. Yeah, but it wouldn't be very nice to. There you have it. How can you get anything done when you have so many different opinions? 20 minutes now away from 9 o'clock. We've got a guest on the way in just a moment. Well, our scheduled guest unavailable right now, so we'll try and see if we can't get Brandon Curtis on the air with us from 3% Idaho, perhaps in the next hour. Brandon is, of course, helping organize that march scheduled for Twin Falls Sunday at noon. They're going to be stepping off from the parking lot near that area around Costco, and then marching through town, and that's because they would like to see an end, at least a moratorium at this point, on this refugee resettlement program until we can actually figure out who's coming here. We've got more details on that, obviously, ahead. But since we don't have him, we have a telephone caller, and we'll get to our caller in just a moment. It's 45, coming up on 8:45. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. I always like to have those patient people with us, and I hate to make people wait, but sometimes we have to do it. You're up next, and you're on the air.
Yeah, my comment is, you talked about committees and how it's hard to get things done with so many different opinions. And our liberal Republican leadership uses that as an excuse a lot of times not to take a stand when a stand needs to be taken. And, you were talking about the wolves, but it holds true for everything. The refugee program, everything that comes down the pike. There's a lot of people that don't like the fact that there's wolves out there. The elk populations are down. We have farmers and ranchers that are losing livestock to the wolves. And, as far as the refugee program goes, I'm as sympathetic as the next guy to help somebody that is really in need of help. And I have no problem with helping somebody that's really in need of help. But dadgummit, I get to decide after studying it out who's really in need of help.
I think that's a good point. I think that we can make those decisions on our own and move our own money around where we think it should go.
Well, basically, the Constitution grants us the privilege of helping our neighbor. The Constitution grants us the secure borders.
Well, I think you're onto it. Let me just thank you for the call. Let me just add to this. I agree that you've got a great many people who are using the excuse we can't get anything done because of the other guys. It's especially common in Washington, and we know it happens in Boise as well. And it even happens in Twin Falls and Kimberly and Rupert and in Buell. But obviously, we can eventually. It's not going to happen. Maybe even in some of our lifetimes. Those 40 guys who make up that Freedom Caucus in the House of Representatives in Washington, they're less than a tenth of the entire body. But before 2011, when they took their chairs in January of that year, there weren't any of them. Well, there might have been a couple of guys who thought along those lines. Jim Jordan was one. But we had this huge surge, and we went to 40. Now, can we get another 40 in the next 4 years? We'll make it 80. And because when you start getting to a number like that, then it could happen. But then you're going to need to keep going because you're still talking just a fifth of that body, less than a fifth of that body, that House of Representatives. And there are so few in the U.S. Senate. On the state level, it's a little easier to sort all of this out. I got to tell you, though, I see so many people who've been in state government, not just here, but in other states for so long, just simply because, well, he did something for my family. And that's it. They do some good constituent service now and then, help you out with a problem and the like, and you're going to vote for them, right? Because, well, that's what they're there for. It's like city elections. I was thinking about this the other day. We have a candidate who's coming on the air with us next week. He's going to be he's a challenger for the council here in Twin Falls. But after I got off the phone with him, I started thinking about that. Even on the local level, that power of incumbency is so important because a lot of these people they got elected in the first place because they did a lot of good community service, or because somebody knew their father, or because somebody knew them in school, and they were okay. So we end up voting for them. And I think it's very difficult for a challenger in any sense to overcome that. I can remember I was living in a small town many, many years ago, and there was a fellow who desperately wanted to get into politics. And he had one of the quickest rises I ever saw. First of all, he lived in a heavily Republican area, so he changed his registration from Democrat to Republican. He owned a meatpacking business. Then he started showing up at the Little League Park. They had a concession stand there, and he would donate the hot dogs and the hamburgers that they would cook. And just say, hey, I wanted to do it because I think it's good for the community and it's good for the kids. So he developed this reputation because he was coming by dropping off all of that free meat to help promote Little League and help the concession stand stay in business. And with that, he announced he was running for mayor. And lo and behold, he got elected, hands down. Spent a couple of years doing that, then announced he was running for county legislature. He went to some of the local powers that be who owned a really big development company in the area and really controlled what was going on in government because they had all the cash. And they could say, well, this guy supports jobs in the county, in other words, my business, or this guy doesn't. So they promoted his run after just 2 years for county legislature. He got elected. 2 years later, he was named the chairman of that legislature. Why? Because he kept brown-nosing the same people. And I remember meeting him I had to go to a Republican breakfast one morning. A friend of mine took me along to the Republican breakfast. And I met this guy and I met his wife, this candidate. And I thought, wow, the wife is really sharp as a tack, but I thought this guy probably needs her to tie his shoes in the morning. He was that much of a dingling, and yet he ended up climbing the ladder that quickly. Probably had a lot of advice from her in the background. That's where our problems stem from. We continue to vote for people like that because, well, hey, he's a good guy, and he paid for my cup of coffee. Or remember the old TV show, Green Acres? It was one of my favorites when I was a kid. And there's a scene, there's an entire episode where Oliver decides he's going to run for Congress. And he's going to challenge a longtime popular incumbent by the name of Ben Hanks because he thinks that Hanks is just a good old boy who doesn't really accomplish anything. So they stage a debate at the local high school, and they get up on the stage, and Oliver comes out, and he's well-dressed and dapper as he always is, and he gives this great opening statement. And it's just brilliant about the things that he will do and how it will be good for people and, save money, etc. And then it's Ben Hanks' turn. He's the incumbent. Ben Hanks steps up to the microphone, smiles, looks at the crowd and says, did you get your Ben Hanks hot dog before you came in? And the crowd erupts in cheering. Because he put up a hot dog stand outside and people were getting free hot dogs before they came in. And they voted for him. Now, if you're that shallow, and I hate to say it, a lot of us make decisions based upon that, even signage. I was driving around the city yesterday, and I had to run. It's a confession. I had to go to Walmart. I try to avoid it, but every once in a great while, I just can't find something somewhere else. So I had to drive all the way across town after I got out of work yesterday, and I took a lot of the back streets. And I was looking at the political signs. You know the value of putting up those political signs? It's this. A lot of people are going in to vote, and they may be voting for one thing and another candidate and in another office, but they feel responsible. They feel they have to vote for someone on every line. So they see a name that they know because they've seen the signs, and they click on that. I think a lot of that goes on. And again, I keep going back to what Rush Limbaugh calls it, low information voters. We're coming up on 8 minutes away from 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Telephone number if you'd like to reach our show, 736-0300. That's 736-0300. And we have a caller with us right now on this chilly morning, 45 outside. Inside the studio, not much warmer. You're up next. You're on the air.
Hi, Bill Colley. This is Brandon Curtis with the 3% of Idaho.
Hey, glad we could make some contact. I was going to try to call you back after my next break, but as long as you're here, we'll take it.
Sorry about that. My phone didn't ring, so I'm not sure what happened there.
You know what? I have a situation with my cell phone that does well, you know what? It's still technology we haven't quite caught up with yet. First Correct. Of all, welcome to the program. Well, good to have you here with us.
Well, thank you for having me this morning. I'm going to apologize. I'm fighting off a cold bug, so my voice is a little bit raspy, so I apologize for that up front.
Well, you'll be much better by the time we get to Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give us a little background. This thing starts at noon on Sunday in Twin Falls. First of all, some of the logistics. What do people need to know? You start where do you go, and then what's the goal?
Well, so we're going to be meeting at the Winco parking lot there in Twin Falls at noon on Sunday. And this will be for the rally for the refugee program here in Idaho.
All right, so I want to make that clear. I may have said Costco earlier, but it's Winco, the Winco parking lot.
Correct. It's going to be at the Winco parking lot.
Okay, and that's a Target, Winco, Jack in the Box, so people will recognize that area. And you'll gather people together. I'm sure there's going to be, just a bit of a short organizational opening, and then you march where?
So we're going to march right on down Blue Lakes Boulevard, and we're going to make the corner down there to the entryway of the college. And then that's where we will stop and stage there for a little bit and have a rally there.
I guess the point is we need to draw some attention to this and the fact of the matter that the public just is not being heard. And I do know that a lot of people in your organization believe it's just time to stop this program because we really don't have any idea who's coming here.
Correct. And our position is that there really isn't a program in place. That's the problem. We're not against, and we want to make that clear, we're not against immigrants. We're not against the refugees. We're not against any of those things. What we're against is the process in place, or lack thereof, I should say, of the way they're coming here. We are using resources, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of resources to bring these refugees here, and we're not vetting them. There's no way to find background information. We don't even know who's coming here until there's a problem here. The most recent thing being the Boise bomber that was recently on trial here and convicted was a product of the refugee program.
Right. I think that a lot of people, we may see some rain Sunday, but the forecast has improved. It may just be occasional showers. That could dampen turnout because I know how it does it with these things. But still, a lot of people will look at any particular turnout that happens and try to make some judgment about how much support you have. But I think that it all comes back to this. If there was some sort of public referendum and we could actually ask the public how they felt, and I'm sure you feel the same way, that people are overwhelmingly at this point opposed to going through with this.
Correct. Very much so.
And for people who don't know a lot about 3% Idaho, you have a website, obviously, and the name comes from, of course, the Revolutionary War. But how can people learn more about your organization?
They can go to our website page, which is www.iii%idaho.org, or they can find our organization page on Facebook. If they just search in Facebook 3% of Idaho, it'll come right up. We've been getting a lot of messages with questions through our Facebook asking, why we take the stand we do, or more so, how people can get involved to help us out. And you don't need to be a member of our organization to come take the stand. We're welcoming all public to come and voice how they feel about this situation.
And I was going to say, it's not just 3% Idaho. It's you're working in conjunction with a great many other organizations for this march and rally on Sunday.
We've had some other organizations. We are sponsoring it and have spearheaded this particular situation on Sunday in the rally. We have some other organizations that have come alongside of us that are going to also be there, so that'll bring in more numbers, absolutely.
You obviously understand that, and I've been reading some of the what you might call the left-wing blogs about this. At the moment, 3% Idaho is definitely on their naughty list, but I would bet if people came out and met most of you that they would find out that you're pretty good people.
Absolutely, and that's what we try to tell people. We try not to engage with them in these arguments they want to have about how bad we are, or because we take a stand against the program itself, they see that as we're taking a stand against the refugees directly. So then all of a sudden we're a hate group or we're racist. That's not it at all. We're just asking for a process in place, and we're saying, hey, before Idaho dumps all this money into bringing in refugees and housing them and draining our dwindling resources here in Idaho, let's look out for our vets and our homeless right here and our students here. Let's help them first.
I think you bring up a good point. We tend to forget that we tend to forget that there's so many people, and I read that the other day, in fact, about the number of veterans who are homeless and who need help. And I've been reading about, obviously you can't drive anywhere in Idaho without seeing somebody. You'll take one look at their house. There are people in need here. Why don't we pay more attention to that?
Right, and that's the point that we are trying to drive home with this position. We need to be paying attention to our Idaho citizens, our for that matter, our own citizens here in the United States, nationwide. We're a nation in dire.
Well, Brandon Curtis, I want to thank you for your time. I hope to see you on Sunday. I should be ready to go, and I need the walk anyway for the exercise.
You and I both.
Right. Hey, good hearing from you.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll look forward to seeing you out there Sunday. I'll be out there personally. All of our leadership will be out there. So if anyone's listening, they want to come out, and we'll be there, open arms, and we're friendly. Don't believe everything you read. We are very friendly and professional people.
Super. Hey, thank you. Look forward to it.
Okay, thank you for having me this morning.
Brandon Curtis joining us this morning from 3% Idaho, giving us some details. Meeting in the Winco parking lot Sunday at noon, and then they will walk down to the main entrance of the college and have a short rally there. And they're hoping to bring attention to this refugee resettlement program and the fact that the public just is not getting a hearing, and that there may be some dangerous people that could be coming here. We've got another hour of the program, but first, news from Fox Radio. That's on the way.